Welcome to Smart Home Tidbits, where Sarah and John, your AI guides, summarize the latest in smart living, keeping you informed and inspired in just minutes. Let's dive in.
All right, so today we are diving into the world of smart home installation.
Yeah, a field that's exploding with opportunity right now.
Right.
But also one that I'm sure you know, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed by all the different systems and the skills you need to learn.
It's kind of like walking into a Home Depot, but it's the size of like a small city, Like you're excited to be there, but you're also like, whoa, where do I even start?
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, though, you've brought in a fascinating source to kind of be our guide for this.
Yeah.
A Hungarian podcast that's aimed at aspiring smart home installers.
Talk about niche. But it's actually perfect because right out of the gate, they break down this whole feeling of like, I want to be an installer, but HW into these stages. They actually call it the 3 stages of smart home enlightenment.
And I got to say, it is incredibly relatable.
Oh, I bet. So walk me through it. What is stage 1?
So stage 1 is that initial honeymoon phase. I've got this energy, maybe you set up a couple smart devices in your home, you're feeling pretty good, pretty confident.
And then you realize that setting up your mom's smart speaker is very different from designing a whole system for a client.
Exactly. And the Hungarian hosts really emphasize this. They actually recommend making your own home your training ground. Make those beginner mistakes there, not on a client's dime.
Okay, that's actually really smart. Learn the ropes in an environment where the stakes aren't as high. So what happens when that initial confidence wears off? That's got to be stage 2, right?
You nailed it. Stage 2 is that, wait a minute, there's how much to learn realization. Suddenly all those YouTube tutorials you binge watched feel like a drop in the ocean.
Because now you're dealing with different protocols and mesh networks and potentially integrating with systems that are already there. It's a whole other level.
Exactly. And this is where the Hungarian hosts, they stress the importance of not just learning, but learning strategically. So instead of trying to master every single device or every single platform that's out there,
you need to focus on the knowledge that will actually be useful to you when you're out there in the field.
Precisely. Think of it like this. You wouldn't try to learn how to drive by, memorizing every car part ever made. You'd focus on those core skills like steering, braking, and just understanding how to be on the road.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So are you telling me there are driving skills for smart home installation?
Absolutely. Things like understanding how different communication protocols work together. So for example, you might have Z-Wave for, let's say, reliable device control, Zigbee for sensors, and then you have Wi-Fi for things like streaming or security cameras. Knowing how all of these interact is essential.
Because if one area glitches, it could cascade through the entire system if you're not careful.
Exactly. And just like learning to drive, at some point you got to get behind the wheel and actually practice.
Right. No amount of reading manuals can replace that hands-on experience.
Which brings us to stage 3. Okay, I need a plan and maybe a nap.
I am already feeling that one, and we haven't even installed anything yet.
It's that moment where the initial excitement can easily turn into overwhelm, especially if you don't have the right structure or that support system in place.
So how do you avoid hitting that wall? Or at least, how do you pick yourself back up if you do? Because I'm guessing the Hungarian hosts have some thoughts on this.
They do. And this is actually where their perspective gets really interesting. They argue that becoming a successful smart home installer, it actually goes beyond just the technical skills.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit.
Because think about it. You're not just installing gadgets. You're designing these systems that are going to be woven into people's lives.
Yeah, it's like being a tech-savvy interior designer almost, where you need to understand the flow of their home, their habits, even their aesthetic preferences.
Precisely. They emphasize the importance of becoming a holistic installer, someone who doesn't just see the wires and the devices, but sees that bigger picture of how it's going to impact the client's life.
So it's less about being a walking encyclopedia of smart home tech and more about being a problem solver, a good listener.
And a bit of a detective, too.
A detective?
Absolutely, because part of being that holistic installer is being able to ask the right questions to uncover what the client actually needs, what their goals are.
So not just what kind of system are you looking for, but more tell me about your daily routine. What are your pain points? What are you hoping to actually achieve with a smart home?
Exactly. And they give this great example. Imagine a client says, I want to improve my home security. A less experienced installer might just jump right into talking about cameras and motion sensors.
But a holistic installer is going to dig a little deeper and say, okay, well, do you have pets that might trigger false alarms? Do you live in an area with frequent power outages? Those are things that I need to know.
Exactly, because those details might lead you to recommend a system with battery backups, pet-friendly sensors, maybe even integration with an actual security company. It's about tailoring that solution to that specific person, not just pushing products.
Okay, yeah. I'm starting to see the value in this whole holistic approach. It's about being a trusted advisor, not just a salesperson with a toolbox.
Exactly. And that's where choosing the right smart home system, or actually more accurately, systems, becomes crucial.
Wait, are you saying I need to learn multiple systems? How am I supposed to find the time for that?
I know it sounds like a lot, but trust me, the Hungarian hosts, they make a really compelling case for why this is essential.
All right, I'm all ears. Convince me.
Well, think about it like this. Imagine you're a chef, right? You wouldn't want to be stuck with just one knife. A chef's knife is great for most things, but sometimes you need a paring knife for the detail work, or a serrated knife if you're, cutting bread.
Yeah.
Each tool has its purpose.
So the different smart home systems are like my culinary arsenal. Each one is suited for different situations.
Exactly. So let's say a client, they want a really basic smart lighting setup for their apartment.
Yeah.
A mesh network system like Philips Hue or LIFX might be perfect for that. Super easy to install, no need to rewire the whole place.
But for a larger home with more complex needs, that's where you might need a wired system, like a Control4 or a Crestron system, that offers more reliability and control.
You got it. And sometimes you might even need to combine systems. Maybe a client wants the simplicity of a mesh network for their lighting, but needs the robust security features of a wired system. Knowing how to bridge those two worlds, that's where you get like a whole other level of customization.
Okay, I'm starting to see why being like multilingual as an installer is so valuable. But how do I even choose which systems to focus on? I mean, there are new ones popping up all the time.
The Hungarian hosts actually address this. They suggest approaching it kind of like test driving different cars.
All right, I like where this analogy is going. Keep going.
Think about it. You can read all the reviews you want about a car, but you won't really know if it's right for you until you actually get behind the wheel.
Yeah.
You feel how it handles, you test out the features, see if it actually fits your lifestyle. Exactly.
Yeah.
So they recommend picking like 2 or 3 systems that pique your interest. Maybe one that's known for being super user-friendly, another one that's more like robust and customizable. Then get your hands dirty.
So sign up for those free trials, tinker with the software, maybe even install a small system in your own home.
You got it. And as you're experimenting, pay attention to what clicks with you. Do you enjoy the challenge of programming, like complex automation sequences? Or do you prefer systems that are more plug-and-play, more intuitive?
Yeah.
Because those preferences, they can typically guide you towards systems that align with your strengths and interests, which ultimately makes you a better installer.
Makes sense.
And here's another great point they made. You can learn a lot from the systems you don't end up specializing in.
Really? How so?
Well, let's say you try out a particular system, and you just find it overly complicated or clunky. That experience is still valuable because it teaches you what not to do, what design choices to avoid.
Right.
It also helps you better appreciate the strengths of the systems you do choose to focus on. It's like dating. Sometimes you got to go on a few bad dates to truly appreciate the good ones.
Okay, I'm loving that analogy.
Sure.
But let's be real, even with the best intentions, there are going to be times when I'm in over my head. What happens then? I can't exactly call up the Hungarian podcast host for tech support when I'm in the middle of a client's living room.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
And they emphasize this. Finding a supportive community, whether it's other installers, mentors, online forums, whatever it is that is essential.
Because even the most experienced pros need someone to bounce ideas off of or just to ask for help when they're stumped, right?
Totally. They shared a story about a time they were installing this complex home theater system, and they hit a wall with the audio calibration.
Oh, I've been there. Hours spent fiddling with settings, the speakers are refusing to cooperate.
They were about to pull their hair out, but then they remembered a tip from a random online forum that they stumbled upon like months earlier.
And it worked.
Worked like a charm. It was something so simple like a setting they overlooked.
Wow.
But having that community to turn to, it saved the day. And probably their sanity.
Okay, I'm convinced. Community is key. But speaking of challenges, I imagine those early days as an installer are a bit like navigating a minefield of potential client disasters. Any advice on how to avoid those?
It's so true. It's so easy to get caught up in the technical stuff, but the Hungarian hosts, they really stressed that being a successful installer is also about mastering, like the art of client management.
Because even the most impressive smart home setup is useless if the client doesn't know how to use it, or worse, they just hate it.
Exactly. And that's why they emphasize the importance of not just installing systems, but truly, like, understanding the client's needs and their expectations from the very beginning.
Okay.
So yeah, clear communication is crucial. Asking those right questions, explaining things in a way that makes sense to people who aren't as techy, maybe even providing some basic training after the installation is done.
Right.
Just really holding their hand through that process.
So it's about going that extra mile to make sure they feel comfortable and empowered using this technology that you've installed for them.
You got it. And here's another great point they made. Always underpromise and overdeliver.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Meaning, don't make promises you can't keep, especially when it comes to like timelines or budgets.
Exactly. It's always better to set realistic expectations and then exceed them, even if it's something small.
Like throwing in a free smart bulb or offering to walk them through the system setup one more time.
Exactly.
It's those little touches that build trust and lead to those happy clients who are going to recommend you to their friends.
And happy clients lead to referrals. And referrals, we know, are the lifeblood of any business.
They are the best marketing.
The best, for sure.
Okay, this is all gold. But you mentioned earlier that the Hungarian hosts themselves, they went through their own kind of learning curve when they were first starting out. Did they share any specific examples?
They did. And it's actually pretty relatable. So one of the hosts, Peter, he had been experimenting with DIY smart home setups since like the early 2000s. We're talking X10 systems and those clunky early touchscreens.
Whoa, way back when those systems were using what, dial-up internet?
Pretty much. But even with that early exposure, when it came time to actually install a professional-grade system in his own home a few years ago,
It was a completely different beast.
you got it. He described feeling overwhelmed by just the sheer number of choices, the jargon, even just figuring out which companies were reputable and which ones were maybe best avoided.
That research paralysis we talked about earlier, too many options, not enough guidance. I can definitely relate to that feeling.
Oh, 100%. And then on top of that, they described feeling frustrated by just the lack of clear, unbiased information that was available, especially for someone coming from more of a DIY background.
So they ended up making some costly mistakes.
Not necessarily costly, but definitely frustrating. They overspent on equipment that didn't actually end up meeting their needs, struggled with compatibility issues between different devices, and just wasted countless hours trying to troubleshoot problems that, in retrospect, were totally avoidable.
Ouch. That sounds like a recipe for burnout.
It can be. It can be.
So how do they break free from that cycle of frustration and actually start to develop those essential installer skills?
So they realized they needed a more structured approach to learning. They started by seeking out mentorships with more experienced installers. They were going to industry conferences, and they were really diving deep into the technical documentation of the systems they were most interested in.
So they basically turned their own learning process into a case study for aspiring installers.
Exactly. And what they discovered is that while that hands-on experience is crucial, it's equally important to develop those foundational driving skills that we talked about earlier.
Things like understanding the principles of networking, the different communication protocols, the basics of electrical work, that kind of stuff.
You got it. They realized that having that solid grasp of the fundamentals allowed them to learn new systems faster and troubleshoot problems way more effectively.
Because it's not just about knowing how to install a specific device, it's about understanding how all those devices work together as part of a larger ecosystem, right?
Exactly. They compared it to the difference between knowing how to use a smartphone and knowing how to build one.
Okay, that's a great analogy. So it's not just about being tech savvy, it's about developing a deeper understanding of the underlying principles that are driving the technology. But with so many different systems and approaches out there, how do you even begin to identify those core principles? Did the Hungarian hosts offer any guidance on that?
They did. And their advice was surprisingly simple, but not necessarily easy to implement.
Okay.
They recommended starting by honestly assessing your own strengths, your weaknesses, and your passions.
So it's about knowing yourself as well as you know the tech.
Exactly. They argued that this self-awareness is crucial because it'll help you identify areas where you naturally excel and then areas where you might need to focus your learning, right?
Because let's be real, no one can be an expert at everything. But if you can identify your strengths, you can build on those and then find ways to either outsource or collaborate on those areas where you might not be as strong.
Precisely.
That's such a great takeaway. It's not about trying to be good at everything. It's about recognizing your strengths, embracing your weaknesses, and then finding ways to either delegate or collaborate on those aspects that might not be your forte.
100%. And they emphasize that this approach is even more important as your business grows.
Because you can't be the tech expert, the salesperson, the project manager, and the customer service representative all rolled into one.
Exactly. Eventually, something's got to give. But by recognizing those strengths and building a team or even just a network that complements your strengths,
you can create a more sustainable and scalable business model.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to another really interesting point that they made. One that I think is crucial for anyone who's looking to thrive in this ever-evolving field.
Hit me with it.
They said that being a successful smart home installer, it isn't just about mastering the technical skills or even the client management side of things.
There's more. I'm starting to feel like becoming a smart home guru requires like a PhD in life.
And they actually laughed when they said this on the podcast. But they emphasized that, in a way, it's true. They argued that the most successful installers are the ones who approach their work with this, like deep sense of curiosity and a willingness to constantly learn and adapt.
Because the world of smart home technology is constantly evolving.
Constantly.
What's cutting edge today might be obsolete tomorrow.
Exactly. They say if you want to stay ahead of the curve, you have to be comfortable with the fact that you'll never stop learning.
So it's not just about acquiring a certain body of knowledge. It's about cultivating a mindset of continuous learning and growth.
You're getting it. And they shared a great analogy for this. They said that trying to master the world of smart home technology is like trying to drink from a fire hose.
Okay, I can see where this is going. It's overwhelming, it's relentless, and there's no way you're going to catch it all.
Exactly. But here's the thing. You don't have to drink from the fire hose. Instead, you need to find a way to channel that flow of information, to direct it in a way that's manageable and actually beneficial for you.
So it's not about trying to absorb everything. It's about being strategic in what you choose to focus on and how you choose to learn it.
Exactly. They recommended identifying your areas of interest within this whole big world of smart home technology and then finding those really reliable sources of information within those niches.
So for example, if I'm really fascinated by the potential of home automation, I might subscribe to industry blogs that are focused on that area, join online communities dedicated to a particular home automation platform, maybe even attend workshops or conferences that delve deeper into those technologies.
You're getting it. It's about being proactive in curating your own learning journey rather than just feeling overwhelmed by this fire hose of information that's coming at you.
Which, by the way, can feel very overwhelming. How do I even begin to process all of this? So it's about becoming a curator, an expert curator of your own knowledge, not just a passive consumer of whatever information happens to come your way.
Exactly. And they shared a great tip for actually staying on top of things. They suggested setting aside dedicated time each week for professional development.
Okay.
Treat it almost like a client meeting. Block out an hour, 2 hours in your calendar and dedicate that time to reading articles, watching those tutorial videos, maybe experimenting with some new devices or new software, whatever it is.
So you're saying make it a habit, make it part of your routine.
Exactly. And they emphasized that this doesn't have to feel like a chore either.
Right.
In fact, they encourage installers to approach this learning process with a sense of playfulness, a sense of experimentation.
Because at the end of the day, this technology is supposed to be fun. And if you're not enjoying the learning process, I imagine that's going to show in your work.
Exactly.
If you were just overwhelmed and burnt out by the time you get to your client's house, they're going to feel that.
They will. Which actually brings me back to something you said earlier about how this can feel like you need a PhD in life to be a successful smart home installer.
Which, let's be honest, it kind of does sometimes.
It does. This field requires such a unique blend of technical expertise, those people skills, that business acumen.
You got to wear a lot of hats.
A lot of hats. But here's the thing. You don't need to have all the answers right away.
Right.
Because the learning never really stops.
Exactly. Every client you work with, every project you take on, even every new piece of tech that comes out, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And the most successful installers are the ones who embrace that journey with a spirit of curiosity, with humility, and I think most importantly, with this genuine desire to help people.
That's beautifully put, and I think it really does speak to the heart of what makes this field so exciting. It's not just about the technology, it's about the people and that potential to really make a difference in their lives.
Absolutely. And I think the Hungarian host, they left us with this really powerful question.
Okay.
Something for you to kind of ponder as you continue exploring this world.
Or hit me with it. They asked, what unique skills and perspectives can you bring to the table as a smart home installer?
It's like they're challenging us to look beyond those technical checklists and really think about what makes us uniquely suited to this kind of work.
Exactly. Maybe you have a background in design and you can help clients create smart homes that are not just functional, but also really beautiful to live in.
Or maybe you have this knack for teaching and you really excel at demystifying complex technology for clients who are less tech savvy.
Yes. Or maybe you're just really, really passionate about the potential of this technology to make people's lives easier, safer, more enjoyable.
Because at the end of the day, that passion, it's contagious.
It is.
And it's what's going to set you apart from the competition and make you that sought-after expert in this field.
I 100% agree.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired. This has been amazing. Thanks for taking us on this journey and for, sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure. It's been so fun to chat about this with you.
And to all of you listening out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of smart home installation. Remember, the most important tool in your toolbox isn't a screwdriver or a software program. It's your own unique perspective and that willingness to never stop learning. So until next time, keep exploring, keep innovating, and keep those aha moments coming.
Thanks for tuning in to Smart Home Tidbits. Join Sarah and John next time for more smart insights.